Good evening and welcome to CYC News for today, the 1st of March 2015 and the 22nd of Mshir, 17:31 am. I'm Andrew Botros.
And I'm Michelle Ibrahim. In today's headlines, monks defy attempts to destroy Fayoum Monastery with their bodies. Emigrant Copt in US demonstrate in memory of fallen cousin. Copts targeted systematically in North Sinai. Islamic State holds 150 Assyrians to send message to the world about them today. Legal advisor to St. Catherine's Monastery asks Egyptian president to interfere and end crisis. US condemns kidnap of Christians in Syria. Terrorists reportedly looking for Copts returning to Egypt at border.
To our top story, where the crisis of St. Macarius, the Alexandrian monastery in Wadi Nairan, Fayoum, was renewed after bulldozers and vehicles of the Arab construction company arrived Tuesday to demolish the monastery's walls, to build a road linking Fayoum to Wahat. The monastery's monks objected to the project because the road would destroy the ancient church dating back to the 4th century AD. More than 50 monks stood in front of the construction company's bulldozers that tried to demolish the monastery's walls to stop them. A monk from the monastery said they were surprised this morning that the construction company workers were stationed next to the walls of the monastery to start destroying it in order to build the Fayoum-Wahat road that would run through the monastery and would result in the destruction of all caves, churches and Coptic monuments that dated back to the 1st centuries. In a press statement today to Al-Fajr newspaper, the monks stressed that while Muhammad Nabih, governor of Fayoum, met with a delegation from the monastery in the province headquarters and assured them that the road crisis would be postponed for a week until a solution is reached, but they were surprised by the machinery equipped to start demolition work. The monk pointed out that the monastery's monks are currently stationed to protect the wall, and in the opposite side there are workers and bulldozers that are ready to start work. He added that they were waiting for the arrival of the leaders of the armed forces in the region to start work. The crisis began in 2014 and the church, headed by Pope Tawadros II of Alexandria, discussed the issues of building the Wahat Fayoum road running inside the monastery. The Ministry of Transportation, in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment, issued a decision several months ago to build a road to link Fayoum to Wahat. The road would pass through the territory of the monastery of St. Macarius in Wadi Nairan, Fayoum, which will split the monastery into two parts and cause damage to its ancient buildings.
An emigrant Copt in the US demonstrates in memory of his fallen cousin. Hannah Assad is a network engineer who lives in Fairfax, Virginia, and grew up in the same southern Egyptian town as his best friend and cousin Samuel Elhem, who was beheaded by the Islamic State in Libya earlier this month. Assad said, "I kept calling my cousin and telling him he had to leave Libya, but there was no safe way out." Assad was able to immigrate to the United States several years ago, but Elhem had gone to Libya as a laborer according to a Tuesday article in the Washington Post. At just 29 years old, Assad joined 20 other protesters on Tuesday. They wore orange jumpsuits similar to those worn by the 21 Coptic Christians beheaded in Libya and stood outside the White House. They knelt with their hands behind their backs. Behind them, other demonstrators held up photographs of the real victims and the blood-red waves where their headless corpses were thrown, reported the Post. The demonstrators were chanting, "Obama, Obama, did you see Christian blood in the sea?" "The militants murdered my cousin, my nephew and my classmates," said Assad of the beheading. "Someday soon they will start murdering people in this country." The Salafi leader considers participation of Copts in parliamentary elections as corruption. "The participation of women and Copts in elections is not permissible," said Sheikh Mohammed El-Qadi, a member of the Salafist Call Council. He added that no party restored to this action a minor sin in order to avoid committing grave sins in an article entitled "Political Participation Under the Microscope" on Wednesday, published on the Islamic Fatah news website. There is no doubt that political participation in a democratic system has many interests, which cannot be ignored, achieved in reality. There are evils that can be avoided in the future within the framework of the legitimate balance between the pros and cons that control the political participation. There are pros have already been fulfilled that must be preserved. There are other pros that could be achieved in the future. There are many interests that should be put in mind when we make any decision in the future. Katie said that it is clear that the party must submit to the election law, which requires the nomination of women and Christians on the list. We believe that the participation of women and Christians are not permitted. but the fatwa permitted their participation for their party interests, he said. He continued, "There is no doubt that politics is from religion. Those who say we have to go back to the mosques and leave the political work, I tell them, who will leave mosques for you without legislation and laws? This perspective consolidates secularism."
Egyptian thinker Samir Morkos, a member of the National Council for Human Rights, said beheading Christians in Libya was severely painful. Morkos, who served as an assistant to the Morsi regime for democratization, extended condolences to the family of Libya's martyrs. Hosted on Sat7 TV, Morkos said the popular reaction overcame the adversity and the people considered the ancient incident against all Egyptians. According to Morkos, the incident aimed at splitting the Egyptian people and damaging the Egyptian national security. He stressed the need for a strategy and a vision for such incidents in case they occur again. Morkos explained that Egypt is experiencing labor-like pains, pointing out that the progress in all historical experience since the French Revolution to the modern age had been achieved through difficult moments. Morkos said he rejects the quota system, calling for stopping religionization of the public sphere. He added the elections should be waged on a political basis. Voters will be fragmented and there will not be as big of a turnout, Morkos said. When asked about the upcoming parliamentary elections, the current scene is a recall of the old scene because the election law provides for allocating 80% of the seats to individual candidates, and this means that the candidates will have more money that will win. He added that the members of the religious movements will participate again, and this will produce a parliament that is dominated by wealth, religion, which may impede the democratic transition. The Egyptian thinker stressed that Egypt did not know a sectarian system over his history, but this was political practice in 1970s with the beginning of Sadat's regime. Morkos pointed out that the Copts are part of the social fabric and that the revolutionary path will replace religious divisions with a political division on basis of efficiency, as happened in the physicians' syndicate elections. Morkos also noted that the political leadership expresses a high expectation for a religious revolution, and this is important and good. We need a radical religious revolution that affects many things, including religious interpretation and theorization, he added.
The situation for Coptic Christians in Egypt's North Sinai is very bad due to the current situation of governorate, according to Abunab Gerges Hanna, head of the Coptic Coalition of North Sinai. He said in press statements on Thursday that there is a systematic targeting of Copts in North Sinai as crimes are committed continuously against them. He pointed to the attack committed at midnight against Copt Nabil Marhos in his house in front of his wife and children. He also pointed to the killing operation of Abdul Shahid in his shop a few days ago. The head of the coalition said that they were surprised by the killing of William, who lived in Arish for more than 23 years in peace and who was killed in broad daylight without the intervention of anyone. Gerges added that these crimes aim to embarrass the state and they are a clear and explicit threat to anyone existing in Sinai.
Israeli settlers belonging to the price-paying movement burnt down the Mount Zion churches in Jerusalem on Thursday, resulted in damage of parts of the church. The Safa Palestinian press agency reported on Thursday that Israelis wrote slogans against Christians and Christ on the walls of the church. It mentioned that fanatics set fire to a room of Christian studies belonging to the Greek Orthodox Church, bathing room and toilet rooms used by priests and students of Christian studies. The attacks is just the latest of an ongoing cycle of violations targeting Islamic and Christian holy sites in Jerusalem and West Bank.
Activists in the Syrian human rights organizations stress that the number of Christian Assyrian abductees is 150, or about twice the number initially reported. They pointed out that the Islamic State intended to release a message today threatening to kill them. In an interview with CNN, members of the Syrian opposition said they had killed dozens of IS members over the past few days and that Kurdish forces have controlled large areas of Hasakeh. Osama Edward, the founder of a Syrian Human Rights Network, told CNN today that the IS holds 150 Christian Assyrians, according to figures provided by activists on the ground, after the preliminary figures suggested the kidnapping of 70 to 100 hostages, including women and children. According to Edward, IS message is expected to be released Wednesday and will be addressed directly to US President Barack Obama and other countries involved in the international coalition against the organization. Edwards added, "The last message from the hostages was a text message sent by a woman to her husband in which she says that IS elements are questioning women if they are volunteers in local militias among them." Edward expressed fear that kidnapped Assyrians may face the same fate of Coptic Christians who were beheaded by IS in Libya last month. "Maybe we will watch the same fate. Therefore, we call on the whole world, America, Europe, and the forces of the international coalition to provide protection for the Assyrians in Syria and save them because they are facing death without a weapon and have no one to protect them," Edward added. According to the Assyrian activist, the IS elements took control of 35 Assyrian villages and towns, forcing thousands of Christian families to flee. Nearly 600 families have reached the cathedral in the city of Hasakeh. With regard to the Syrian situation, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a London-based opposition organisation, said IS has lost at least 132 members since Saturday in raids by coalition forces and fighting with Kurdish forces in Hasakeh province.
The case filed by Major General Khalid Fuada, Governor of South Sinai and head of the local unit of South Sinai against St. Catherine's Monastery, on returning 29 plots of land has been postponed to March the 7th. The case is being considered before the Second Circuit Civil Planetary Court in Sharm el-Sheikh. Munir Sami, legal advisor to St. Catherine's Monastery, called on the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to interfere to the end of the crisis on the monastery. Munir told MCN, "I submitted a request to the Prime Minister 3 months ago to meet the President to issue to him, but I have not received any response yet." Munir added that the State Litigation Authority sent a warning to St. Catherine's Monastery on November 30th, 2014, in the name of the Governor of South Sinai and head of the local unity, demanding the monastery return 29 plots of land. The author gave the monastery 15 days, otherwise the governorate would not have seen the legal procedures against the monastery, according to the head of the monastery, and the monks became angry. He mentioned that the governor of South Sinai went to the monastery on December 8, 2014, to congratulate them on the feast of St. Catherine, and the monks told him that what happened and asked him to interfere. Munir also said that the governor promised to discuss the matter to the State Litigation Authority and Legal Affairs, but monks were surprised by the expulsion case and demand of £1 million. He added that the first hearing session of the case was on February 21, 2014. Munir said the case was filed by mistake because the State Litigation Authority had no capacity. It cannot file such a case, as 29 plots of land to be returned to the governorate, including 23 plots of land that are not registered as Egyptian antiquities. Thus, one who should take a file and take necessary legal procedures is Minister of Antiquities, not the Governor of South Sinai, according to the Preservation of Antiquities Law number 117 of 1983. Hence, the case was filed without capacity. He mentioned that the petition indicated that among 29 plots of land, there is an 8-metre piece of land which is required to be delivered to the governorate. He asked, is it reasonable to steal an 8-metre piece of land? He stressed that the total area of 29 plots of land is not more than half an acre. The legal advisor also stressed that the monastery is registered as an Egyptian monument and it had been established 1600 years ago. At the conclusion of his speech, he asked, who is responsible for filing such an endless case?
Islamic State burns 2 churches in Al-Hasaka. Number of kidnapped Assyrians increases to 280. Sources told the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights that the Islamic State burned 2 churches in Tel Tamir countryside in Al-Hasaka, Syria. The observatory said in a statement published on Thursday that the number of Assyrian civilians who were kidnapped by ISIS during the past 3 days from 11 villages in Tel Tamir countryside in Al-Hasaka rose to 280. The statement said IS led them to Abd al-Aziz Mount, southwest of Tel Tamir. IS controls 10 Assyrian villages in Tel Tamir area, which witnessed a large traffic of displacement as hundreds of citizens escaped to surrounding villages. The statement added, there is information that IS detained Syrian fighters in YPG during its operations in the area. Assyrian resources reported to SOHR that negotiations are taking place through mediators from Arabian tribes and an Assyrian figure to release the kidnapped. Patriarch Moran Mor Ignatius Ephraim II, Syrian Orthodox Patriarch of Antioch and all the East, condemned killing, displacement, terrorizing operations committed against Christians in that area. According to Norsat channel, Ephraim called on the international community to work on releasing immediately and unconditionally all the kidnapped and detained citizens. The Security Council also condemned abduction of tens of Christian Assyrians northeast of Syria and destruction of Christian places and other religious places in Syria. The Council said in a statement published on Wednesday that these crimes show brutality of IS, which is responsible for all the crimes committed against all sons of religions, sects and nationalities without regard to any human value.
A group of Egyptian Copts trapped in Libyan city of Sirte sent an urgent distress message to MCN calling to the Egyptian state to provide an airlift to transport them to Egypt, as they cannot even leave their homes, and they have become jobless without enough money to buy food. Rafat Monir, the Egyptian Copt stranded in Sirte, said Egyptians in general, and Christians in particular, have been experiencing a state of terror and panic since January the 3rd, following the abduction of the first 7 Copts who are on their way back to Egypt. We have left our residences and gone in different groups, in different places, hiding inside the homes of moderate Libyans, and we cannot come out to work for fear of murder and kidnapping, Munir said. Munir added, "We do not leave these places. We were hiding but almost every 4 days to bring food. Then we go back quickly to the shelter inside the Libyan homes. The money we have about to run out and we do not know what to do." We learned that the armed militias, which are controlling Sirte, have erected gates outside the city to stop cars coming out of the city and arrest Egyptians inside them, so we cannot travel back, he pointed out. He called for the intervention of Egyptian authorities quickly by providing an airlift to transport Egyptians, especially as Egyptians in general, Copts and Muslims cannot return.
The United States on Wednesday condemned the abduction of dozens of Christians by the Islamic State in Syria and demanded their immediate release. In a press statement reported by the AFP, State Department spokeswoman Jen Psaki said of IS, "Latest targeting of a religious minority is only further testament to its brutal and inhumane treatment of all those who disagree with its divisive goals and toxic beliefs." AFP reported that the abduction of more than 90 Assyrian Christians appeared to be retaliation for a major Kurdish offensive aiming to recapture nearby villages, quoting a Tuesday statement by the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. ISIL continues to exact its evil upon innocents of all faiths, and the majority of its victims have been Muslims, Psaki said. She added, "To bring an end to these daily horrors, we remain committed to leading the international coalition to degrade and defeat ISIL and to working towards a negotiated political solution that stops the bloodshed and secures a future of freedom, justice and dignity for all Syrians." Tuesday marks the anniversary of killing of 7 Copts in Libya. Tuesday, February 24th of 2015 is the anniversary of the killing of 7 Egyptian Copts in Libya by masked men and throwing them on a Libyan shore. On Monday, the 24th of February 2014, the Libyan police found the bodies of 7 Egyptian Christians killed in the Garotha area west of the city of Benghazi, an area where Islamist militants have carried out many kidnappings and car bombs. The incidents took place on February the 23rd when a group of masked men attacked a building inhabited by Egyptians and took away 7 Copts. A source in Benghazi Medical Center said the 7 Egyptians were shot dead in their heads and chest. The victims were Talat Sadek Basuni, Hani Garas Habib, Nadi Garas Habib, Fauzi Fathi Sadek, Edward Nashid, Ayub Sabri Tawfiq, and Osama Rahmani. Egyptian Copts in Libya are facing continuous serious threats because of their religious identity amid a state of lawlessness in most Libyan cities, the proliferation of armed Islamic groups including the Islamic State or IS and Al-Nusra Front. A few days ago, the Islamic State posted a video of beheading of 20 Egyptian Copts who had been kidnapped from their residence. This took place a few weeks after killing a Coptic Egyptian doctor, his wife and his daughter at the hands of armed militants in Libya. Copts in Libya are also facing difficulties to return to Egypt in light of being targeted on their way back to Egypt.
Egyptian Coptic Christians in Libya are facing a great risks on their way back to Egypt, said Ahmed Yaoub Saad, a Copt of Estel village in Salmaout, Menia, who returned from Libya several days ago. Saad noted that terrorists are looking for Copts returning to Egypt and to the Egyptian-Libyan border. Saad added in an interview with MCN that the situation of Egyptians, especially Copts in Libyan city of Zeltia, have become very bad, especially after Ansar al-Sharia, a group of related to the Islamic State, started to prepare weapons in the region to target Copts, which constitutes a serious risk of lives. I was living in the area of Zalita in Libya, which is a quite calm area. After the beheading of Egyptian Copts in Libya by the IS, the situation has become very tense. So a Libyan Muslim friend called me and told me that all the Copts should leave because their lives had become in very grave danger after the Egyptian army launched an airstrike against a stronghold of IS in Libya, said Saad. He explained that 30 Copts gathered and agreed with the travel office to arrange their travel in Egypt. The driver of the travel office distributed the 30 Copts on 6 microbuses among another 35 Egyptian Muslims. Saad said they moved on Wednesday morning and arrived to the first gate in Misurata, which was administered by a group of tribal members. The tribal members told them that the meeting was held between Libyan and Egyptian leaders and they were waiting for the results of the meeting. They informed them that the Egyptian citizens who had nothing to do with politics, but they had not allowed them to pass through the gate. Saad continued to say that they continued on the journey the next day and decided to take the Misurata road. The gates were administered by only Libyan tribes every 2 kilometers, where they were inspected and their mobile phones and telephone lines and money were taken. After the Misurata gates, the drivers took another route in the mountains and drove for about 12 hours. They stopped at a cafeteria in Barika area, where they were told that the cars carrying gunmen were in the area and looking for Copts in the cars heading to Egypt. This urged us to stay in the night in the cafeteria out of fear of the militants, and we continued our journey the next day, Saad concluded.
The Council of the Churches of Egypt held an honouring ceremony of the Egyptian martyrs of Libya in the Church of De La Salle in Cairo, Egypt. The representatives of the 5 churches of Egypt attended, as well as some of the representatives of media, literature, press and art. Many of them gave some words for the funeral oration of the martyrs' souls. The ceremony was ended by a prayer with candles for those who suffer, for the integrity of the country and the wisdom of the presidents. Then, some of the martyrs' relatives gave some words. This ceremony was attended by more than 800 persons containing Christians and Muslims alike.
And that's all for CYC News for today. Stay tuned for more Christian content on CYC. I'm Andrew Botros.
And I'm Michelle Ibrahim. And from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia, good night and God bless.